two things. He said, remember this, as the Buddhists or the Hindus consider, the body is just an illusion. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing he said that still resonates in my mind, before he left, he said, oh, and remember, as Einstein said, everything is relative. All right. And then he says, okay, thank you. It was wonderful talking to you guys. Thank you for your time, and walks away. Why I think that's very meaningful is because 2 weeks later, the world shuts down.
This is Mystic Takeaway, dishing up extraordinary real-life stories to inspire wonder and nourish the soul. I'm Elisa Graff. My guest today is Adrian Magana Hernandez of Escondido, California, who shares meaningful exchanges with enigmatic strangers he's met, each with an aura of joy. Good to have you with us. Adrian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, my name is Adrian Magana Hernandez, and I was born and raised in Mexico. After I was done with college and looking for an adventure, I came to the United States. That was in the early 90s. And I found a home right in the United States. So now this is my home, this beautiful country. And I've been here ever since the early 90s. In early 99, I heard this wonderful story that changed my life. I went to see Benjamin Creme talk for the first time. In 2001, I remember right after September 11, I finally found my local group, meditation group. So almost 20 years I've been meditating with the local group. A few years after that, after 2001, the local group decided that we needed to do one of the things we were asked to do was to go out there and tell this wonderful story to as many people as we could reach. So for the last 15 or so years, I made it part of my life that I would go out there as much as I could to tell this wonderful story. And the last year has been a challenge because I haven't been able to go out and talk heart to heart with everyday people in the streets. So I appreciate you inviting me to do this podcast. It's another way of reaching out.
And you live in California, right?
I live in California, yes. I live in San Diego County. The city is actually named Escondido, which is Spanish for hidden. This is the Hidden Valley.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes, so I live in Escondido. It's one of the northern cities in San Diego County. I live about an hour north of the Mexican-American border.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do for a living?
I am a social worker. So also for the last 20 years or so, I have been working with individuals with what we call learning disabilities or something along those lines. The terms keep changing, right, to make them more politically correct, which I agree. So for over 20 years, I've been doing that type of service, helping others reach their goals.
Nice.
And including into the community and giving them a better quality of life that in the past, people in this community, it was harder for them. Most of the time, they were just thrown into institutions, right? And now, in particular in California, I appreciate that sometimes it is a very progressive state. So California was one of the leaders changing this mentality and closing these institutions, and allowing them to have as close to what we would call normal life as possible. And we continue to do that. We seem to be opening more and more opportunities so that they are included in everyday life like any other member of society.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So I do that and I appreciate it because it's another form of service. Even though I get paid to do that, there's a level of service connecting with people that need some help. We all need help, right? And there's always somebody that is ready to give us a hand. And I also have learned a lot from working with this community because they are teachers.
Yeah,
everybody is both a teacher and a student, and I learned that. Right?
That's beautiful, yeah.
And if you open your eyes, you will see that life is constantly teaching you, right? Butterflies, hummingbirds, the plants, they're always teaching us. They're always communicating with us.
Yes.
So any member of this beautiful human family is a teacher.
Did you have any religious beliefs as a child? Were you raised with something?
To a degree, I was raised in a family that wasn't fully Catholic, but in Mexico, most people are Catholics, right? So I did go to church in my early life. I did take my first communion, and I used to attend Mass on Sundays until my teenage years. I was never forced. My family wasn't about a Catholic family. But for a period of time, I kind of enjoy going to Sunday Mass. But like I said, around teenage years, when you begin to question everything, I decided that that was not my path. I actually began to make fun of it, right? Thinking that that was a regressive ideology. And I mean, there's a point to that, right? Sometimes things can be taken to extremes, right? So,
right.
Churchism, right? Regardless of the branch, it can hinder progress. And I started, looking around, reading this, reading that, and opening my views. My mother continued to be a Christian, and I could say that she was my teacher because she also began to look into the spiritual side of and the mystical side of Christianity. So to these days, I still find beauty in the Christian tradition, and in particular the Catholic tradition. I find the churches, particularly Mexico or Europe, those all wonderful churches, they do contain beautiful energy.
Yeah.
And some of the tradition that happens during Mass is mystical.
Right. Absolutely.
But from time to time, if I have the opportunity when I'm traveling and I see a church and there's a Mass going on, I walk.
Actually, being in Europe, there's so many beautiful churches. When I travel, if I go to Spain or Italy, or there's so much incredible art in these beautiful places, and the energies are definitely very strong.
There.
Yeah,
I mean, because as you know, when you invoke the energies, in this case, we invoke the energies of the founder of the church, Jesus. He responds.
Yes, beautiful. Well, so you had a couple stories you wanted to share with us.
I have a few stories. One of them was published in Chair International last year. And maybe I'll leave that one to the end because I find it very meaningful and I'll explain why. But let me see which ones I can share. Okay. This one time I was traveling with my daughter. It was a few years ago, more than 10 years ago. We were in San Francisco. We went to San Francisco because my daughter was moving from being a brownie to an actual Girl Scout. Right.
So she must have been about 12 or 13 or something?
Something like that, pre-teens, 12, 11, 12, something like that. And that is a big event that happens, I guess, every year. So they do this little tradition in which they cross the Golden Gate Bridge. So they call it bridging. They move from being a young brownie into an actual Girl Scout, right? So hundreds, if not thousands of Girl Scouts from around the country land in San Francisco for that weekend. Right.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I mean, I used to live near San Francisco, but I've never heard of that before. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you can see them walking around basically downtown, the typical areas. They're all wearing their brown uniforms and things like that. And the first night that we got there, we went out to eat, the touristy area around Pier, what is it, 49?
Pier 39. Pier 39.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we were having dinner in one of these restaurants, Italian restaurant. We were sitting outside. It was my daughter, her mother, myself. Some of the other friends decided to stay inside the restaurant. So the three of us were sitting out there. And this gentleman who looked like Indian or Pakistani, now that I think about it, I was thinking about it earlier, he kind of reminded me of Krishnamurti. He was frail, skinny, a small body. Walks up to us. He had a bunch of roses and he was selling roses. So at that point, I didn't need a rose. So I said, no, thank you. Right? I don't need a rose. And he becomes very sad when I said, no, thank you. I don't want to buy a rose. His face just turned extremely sad and looks at me and he tells me, but I need to feed my family. So I reach, for my wallet and I hand him $1, just $1. And he takes the $1 and his face just became full of life and a big smile. And he starts dancing in front of us. And he starts doing these very goofy movements and starts playing, in particular with my daughter. Reaches and takes my daughter, I think she was wearing like a beret.
A beret. Mm-hmm.
and takes it and wears it and starts doing these little dances. And for a couple of minutes, it's just full of life and joy, right? And I immediately realized it's something off here because I just handed him $1. He cannot buy anything but $1, right?
Yeah,
But that didn't matter to him,
yeah,
right? He was full of life and joy. Then he walks away, and 5 to 10 minutes later, he comes back and does the same thing again. He starts dancing and just being full of life and joy and grateful for $1. Um, I felt bad that I only gave him $1 at that time, but what I still carry with me is that after that, every time somebody comes to me and asks me for money, I give him money, right? Whether if it's a quarter, if that's all I have, $1, $5, it doesn't matter. If somebody walks up to me and asks me for money, I don't judge, right? I will give him the money. And what you do with that money, that will be up to you, right?
yeah, of course.
Right? It's not up to me at that point, right? But yeah, so I have no doubt that this person was somebody special, right? I mean, because after that, it was as if I had that seed in my heart that I needed to give, and the water carrier just watered, and it flourished.
So you had this experience in your heart of feeling as though that was the lesson for you. Was
That was the lesson for me, correct. And I also feel that from that moment on, the sense of service that I needed to help somebody that comes to me and asks me, in this case, for money, that's part of what I need to do. If somebody comes to me and asks me for money, I should try to help that person, right, with money. There's many ways to describe a master, right? There's the esoteric explanation. These are beings that have achieved enlightenment, right? They have gone through the whole process of learning everything that this planet has to teach you, and they have mastered all of that. That's why they are called masters. And we can also look at them as our elder brothers. I think that's a more appropriate way of describing them, right? They are our elder brothers. And since they have learned and they're ahead of us in this process, then they decide to look back and reach out and help us move along this path. So being wise, these are wise elder brothers that understand that since there is no separation, there's only oneness in humanity. They are here to remind us of this oneness, and they understand, they live it, right? It's 24 hours a day. They understand that there's oneness. The masters and humanity are always interconnected, but we need to be reminded of that because we forgot. So that's why they're here, right? And they do it in so many different ways. Most of them are done in subtle levels that we don't really see, perceive, or understand. But from time to time, for whatever reason, they appear in physical form and make it more obvious, right, that we are here. We haven't forgotten you. And basically, the journey is very simple.
The process of perfectionment.
Correct. It's really very simple. We make it hard because we don't understand it. Because, like I said, there are older brothers, and humanity, most of us are very young, so we really don't understand the ins and outs. But they do, so they can take our hand and guide us. And like I said, from time to time, they make a physical appearance. And they also remind us that there's joy, there's happiness, there's beauty in this process. It doesn't have to be difficult, right? That's why this particular story that I just shared is just $1 brings complete joy to this individual, right?
And he's representing someone. He's representing the humanity that we don't see, that are struggling, that are living on very little money every day because our systems have failed. And we leave a lot of people to slip through the cracks, right? That's the problem.
Yeah, we are leaving a lot of people behind. And that pains me, honestly. Also, his words, I remember them very clear. But I need to feed my family. And again, the oneness of humanity, he didn't mean a family of 1, 2, or 3. He meant the family.
The family of humanity.
Yeah, I need to feed my family. And it's not a $1. It's not the amount that is going to feed the family. It's the action of sharing. It's the action of giving. If I do recall, this I forget, but I don't think I wanted a rose back. I just gave him money, right? I think he gave me the rose, But I didn't buy the rose. I didn't want the rose. He asked for money. I gave him money after he said I need to feed my family.
Yeah.
Um,
So it was symbolic. It was
symbolic.
Yeah.
Because life is symbolic.
Right.
Right. Everything in life is just a symbol. Right. And it depends on what you perceive and what you make out of the symbol. Right. And if your vision is clear, every symbol is a miracle.
That's beautiful. I love that.
These two happened while I was doing outreach. Like I said, for over 15 years or so, I decided to go out there into the communities and tell this wonderful story about these wonderful beings, our elder brothers, the masters, right? That they are here to guide us back into a more just society, right? And give us the ideas and the systems that we could implement so that we can create a better society. It is related to what people call the esoteric teachings, the ancient wisdom that has been given in the past. And there's prophecy, right? And most traditions have a prophecy that when the world is seeing darkness and corruption and ugliness at a very, very big level, these elder brothers return. Usually it's one of these members of this community of elder enlightened brothers, and they come by different names depending on the tradition, returns to guide humanity, right? So every certain periods of time, one of these members returns to guide humanity and to release part of these teachings. And we can go to the libraries and you'll find many books that have been written, not by these teachers, usually by their followers. The story also includes the presence of one particular teacher that is considered at the head of this group of teachers, and he goes by the name of Maitreya. So that is the story that for the last 15 years or so I decided to tell. And in particular, the Southern California meditation group decided to make an effort and do as much as we could to go out there and tell
talk
this
to people.
Story.
Yeah.
So while doing these events, I had many encounters. So I'll share a couple of them that I think are meaningful for the time. This one, the first one, happened about, I think it was 3 years ago. The Southern California Transmission Meditation Group we were doing the Martin Luther King parade. We marched during the parade, and we had this large banner with the words "sharing leads to justice, leads to peace," right? Because that is one of the key messages of Maitreya, that without sharing there can be no justice, and without justice there can be no peace. Mm-hmm. So we were marching because I think that is a highly appropriate message to share during the Martin Luther King event, right? It fits the narrative of the event, right? And as we were walking during the parade, we were chanting, sharing justice, peace, sharing justice, peace, sharing justice, peace. And people reacted positively to the message. We could see people smiling, clapping, taking videos of us, things like that. So at the end of the parade, there is a festival, and we had a booth at these festivals where we also were telling the story and handing out information, talking to people. So I decided to go out and visit the event. I always enjoyed walking around the event and seeing all the other vendors and getting to know the community. That is a wonderful opportunity that this service gave me, is that I visited many, many neighborhoods in California and in other places. And as I think I was looking at a table with African art, if I am correct, I hear this voice. Yeah, I was wearing this T-shirt with this similar message, right? The T-shirt says, it reads, "Share the world resources to end poverty and to end war." So as I was looking at this table, I hear this voice that tells me, "I like your shirt, brother." So I turn around and I see this African-American gentleman that I immediately judged as a homeless person. He was wearing all kinds of different clothes, right? It was a warm day, but he was still wearing a jacket and T-shirt, and colors didn't match, right? And he had a wonderful smile. He was always smiling. He was missing a few teeth. And he tells me, yeah, I like your shirt. And I saw you guys marching. I really enjoy your message. So I tell him, yes, it is a wonderful message, right? Yes, brother. And I tell him, and it's so simple, right? Can you imagine if people would really listen to that message? That's right, brother. He would be so nice, right? I might be, forgetting exactly what he said, but it's along those lines. And then I tell him, I remember, I get close to him, close to his face, and I tell him this part because I had been reading the Bible, and there's a passage in the Bible, and I don't remember which passage exactly, but it kind of reads that when the master comes back and the servants have the table ready for the master, it will be the master that will serve the servants.
Ah, nice.
For some reason, that passage was still stuck in my mind. So I turn around and I tell this gentleman, yes, because you know what? When he comes back, if he catches you serving, then you're in. Right? And for some reason, I didn't imply who is he. Right? I just said when he comes back, I knew he knew what I was talking about. Right? And when I said you're in, I wasn't specific. What does that mean? In where? I just knew he knew what I was talking about. Right? So when I say, hey, when he comes back and he catches you serving, you're in. And he looks at me, opens his eyes, and big smile, and he tells me, "That's right, brother." And he gives me the fist bump.
Fist bump, yeah.
Yeah. So I just said, "Yeah, that's right. Nice talking to you, brother. I gotta go back and do my work, right?" And then I walk away. And I didn't think much about it until I go back and share the story with the fellow coworkers that were inside the booth. And one of them tells me, well, that was special. And then I realized, yeah, that was special, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, I could not stop thinking about the event. And I could not stop thinking about this individual, his physical appearance, in particular, his level of joy. Again, his level of joy, right? And again, whether if he's a great being or just a neighborhood character, it doesn't matter. But he had a lot of joy. And even though he seemed homeless, right, based on what I saw, right, his physical appearance, who knows, he could have been a Hollywood director, right? And he just likes to walk like that. It doesn't matter. He heard the story. He shared joy with me, right? And it made my day. Among many other things, he made my day, right?
Yeah.
And then I shared the story, and then the person inside the booth was also pleased that I had just had that encounter, right?
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I think this is important to talk about this idea of joy because so few people actually allow themselves to feel joy and then to express it, especially in that sort of a setting where you're talking to someone you don't really know. To share that level of joy, that special expression of joy is actually a very rare thing, right? I mean,
it is. And also, again, his physical appearance, right?
Yeah.
One, my immediate judge that this person cannot find joy, right? He could be poor, he could be living in the streets, who knows, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He's full of joy, right?
Yeah.
And I could tell it wasn't a fake joy. It's not that he was on some kind of additive, right, or substance. It was a natural joy. It was honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was sincere. Mm-hmm.
It was sincere. Yes. So the last story that I have for you, and this one was actually published in the Share International magazine. This happened last year. It was the last days of February 2020. I had traveled to Mexico City to do an event in Mexico City. I joined with the Mexico City meditation group, and we do one of the largest book fairs in Mexico, Mexico City. And we do this event, I think it's an 11-day event.
Wow.
And I have to go and fly down there because the Mexico City group is very small and they only have 2 active workers. So then they need one more for a triangle to cover 11 days.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it happened the first day. I had just arrived from San Diego. And I got to my hotel and then I called them and said, yeah, come stop by. It's almost closing time. So it was a Friday night. Stop by and come say hi and let's talk. So I show up at the event. Like I said, it was almost closing time. So it must have been around 8 o'clock, something like that. The event closes at 9. It was the last hour. I remember that. And we were talking. They wanted to hear as much gossip as possible from me coming from the United States. And they always say, what kind of information do you have that you want to share with us, right? What have you heard, right? What are the news, right? They're separated, so they don't hear much. So I was telling them stuff. And suddenly this very well-dressed Asian gentleman walks up to the booth. And immediately he caught our attention. One, because he was a foreigner, and this particular event doesn't really attract many foreigners. For whatever reason, this is a very local, even though it's a very large book fair in Mexico, it's mostly for Mexican writers, and in particular, Mexico City people. It doesn't really attract people from other parts of the country that much, as far as visitors, right? So seeing an Asian person was rare. He was also wearing a suit. So that was also rare. People are dressed highly casual, right? So caught our attentions. He approaches the booth and starts looking at the things and talks to us in a very broken Spanish. It was hard for us to understand. So I asked him if English was better. And he says, oh, yes, English better. So then the conversation happened in English. That again was also interesting. A non-Spanish speaking visit in a book fair was, not normal. And he begins to ask me questions about what is this, what's going on here, right? And I try to explain, well, this is about meditation and the story about the masters. And he says, yes, I know all about that, but still ask me questions, right? But what exactly is this? How do you know this is true? And I tried to explain to him why, right? My belief. And he would just look at me and says, no, that's not good enough, right? Go deeper kind of thing, right? And he was immediately what he was blowing my mind. It's like, boy, I'm giving you everything I have, right? And it's still not enough for you, right? And it took very little time to realize he was the teacher and we were the students, right? And when he asked me, what about meditation? And we said, well, meditation is this and this and that. He said, no, that's not it, right? And he turns around and then teaches us what meditation is, right? It's complete concentration, something along those lines. And then he asked me about Maitreya, and he says, yes, I know about Maitreya. And then he pronounced Maitreya in 3 different forms. Right, something along the lines of Maitreyi, Maitreya, and Maitreyin, something like that. So we assume he was talking in Sanskrit or another language, right? And then he began to recite a mantra in what we assume is Sanskrit. I mean, I didn't ask him what language you're speaking, right? I also remember he was, like I said, an Asian gentleman, probably in his 60s. He had gray hair and he seemed to glow, like he was surrounded by an aura, right? At the moment, I thought maybe it's a reflection of the light. Like I said earlier, this was almost closing time, so there was almost nobody at the event, right, except for the vendors. And because the conversation was happening in English, people were paying attention, right? What's going on over there, right? He also told us about certain traditions, I remember. But the things that are very meaningful to this date is that he told me 2 things. He said, remember this, as the Buddhists or the Hindus consider, the body is just an illusion. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing he said that still resonates in my mind, before he left, he said, oh, and remember, as Einstein said, everything is relative. Right? And then he says, okay, thank you. It was wonderful talking to you guys. Thank you for your time, and walks away. Why I think that's very meaningful is because 2 weeks later, the world shuts down. COVID happened.
Wow.
Right. 2 weeks. That was the last event I did.
Wow.
Right. I had not been able to do any more events because the COVID shut the world down. And those two things, the body is an illusion, but remember, everything is relative. And to this day, that resonates.
Those are really special things to keep in mind, aren't they? At this moment, really special.
Yes. There are other details about this gentleman. Like I said, he was wearing a green suit, which is not a normal color for a suit. It was a very nice, highly tailored. It was very elegant. Because a week later, there was a high feminist march in Mexico City, huge. And the feminist movement in Mexico wears green as a symbol of unity, right?
Okay.
So he was wearing green. Then a week later, there was this green movement of feminism. He also had a pin, right, a lapel pin, that initially I thought it was a flag, maybe the flag of his country. Could be, I couldn't recognize it. But it also looked like one of Benjamin Creme's paintings.
Oh.
Right, when I looked at it, I said, that looks like a flag, but it also looks kind of esoteric, like one of the paintings of Benjamin Creme, right?
I see.
And the other thing that also was very meaningful is that, again, the conversation happened mostly between him and myself, right? He would look at me, take his glasses down, and give me this stare.
So he put his glasses down on his nose and looked over his glasses at you.
Over his glasses and gave me this straight into my eyes stare.
Wow.
Right. And a coworker once told me that a gentleman that visited him at one of these events here in San Diego, that turned out to be Maitreya, did that. Took his glasses down and just looked at him. And to this day, he remembers because he just felt this shock of energy going from his eyes into his whole body, right? I am not very sensitive to these subtle energies, right? Some people are not. At that time, I didn't feel anything, right? I still remember him doing this, right? Putting his glasses down his nose and just looking at me, right? As if making an effort. Are you paying attention?
Yeah.
Right, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Paying attention to what I'm saying. And also reminded me, you're still a student, right? Don't be cocky. There's still much to learn, right? So don't try to pretend you know everything about meditation or esoteric knowledge or all of that, right? Because he pretty much told me everything you said is wrong. I think the other thing is that he was just full of joy, right?
Again, the joy thing.
Full of joy. Even though he was teaching us, right? He was just happy, right? And it's like it was a perfect student-teacher moment that happened there. And like I said, that was the last event that I have been able to do. Hopefully I will be able to do events in the future, but that was the last outreach event that we did. That was the closing.
Wow. Yeah, I love that he said these two things to you. It's really resonating with me that I'm thinking that's a pretty special message. The body is only an illusion. I know it's hard for lots of people to understand that, right? Any of us, we live in a material reality, but it's really important to keep that idea in mind.
It was the middle of March. That's it. We closed down. Remember, it was when the whole world shut down, right? And that's it. Those two things immediately resonated, right? The body is an illusion because what happened is that this little tiny, molecule took over the world, right? That is not even alive, all right? Took over the world and shut down the world. This tiny molecule that is technically not even alive shut down the world. To this day, right, is still, going. We have more questions than answers. And the other one, that everything is relative. That one, you ponder on that, right? You can ponder on that forever. What does that mean, right? Everything is relative. But in particular, because everything we thought we knew, 2 weeks later, this disappear in a sense. To me, that, a lot of what I thought I knew disappear. All right. And when the world shut down because of COVID, I saw it as a wonderful opportunity. I still see it as a wonderful opportunity. But the relativity of everything is important to keep in mind so that we don't attach too much to ideologies, right? It's very important. And that we can be flexible. That's also part of the lesson he gave me, right? Is that, or how I understood the lesson, is that everything is relative. Teachings might or might not be true, all right? So don't get too caught into the teachings and trying to enforce them, which I never do, but that was the lesson, right? I always give the teachings and the listener decides if they're true or not, right? But he reinforced that concept, right? Don't get too caught on into these ideas, any idea, right? That this idea is absolute. Everything is relative, right? Society is relative. Borders are relative. The physical body is relative, to the point that one tiny molecule can close down society. The other thing is very personal, and I thought about it. The body is an illusion. I immediately started thinking about mortality, right? And it's a thing, right? Mortality. And I knew that because of COVID, people close to me could no longer be here, right? And that happened.
That's tough. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I lost my mother. I don't know if it happened because of COVID or not. It happened not too long ago, but yeah, I lost somebody. And I thought about it the whole time when I remember what he said, right? Remember, the body is an illusion, which is one of the keys to the esoteric teachings, right? Almost any tradition will remind you that the body is just an illusion, right?
Yeah.
It's just an accumulation of energy that happens to be solid. It's a bunch of information that we carry because of millions of years of this information happening. And we have this body, which is a wonderful vehicle, but it's just a vehicle of manifestation so that we can learn to master the vehicle and the universe around it, right? So that we can,
the fact that it's not the end when the body dies, that's another important thing in the ageless wisdom teachings, that one comes to realize that
it's not only not the end, it's actually the beginning.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way, because as far as I understand, it is being inside this physical body that is the limiting factor.
Right.
When you don't have a body, there are no limits, right?
Yeah.
And because life is eternal, right? It is only the body that dies, right? And it becomes like Sadhguru says. I don't know if you're familiar with Sadhguru, but Sadhguru says he becomes topsoil. All of us eventually become fertilizer.
Yeah, right? Yeah, compost.
Yes, compost. So it is true, right? And again, we get attached to members of the human family, which is fair, right? We have this emotional attachment. We have this relationship with members of the human family. And eventually that has to come to an end.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been one of the most amazing lessons this last year, is learning how to, none of us know when our time is up or when our family members or loved ones, none of us know when the time is ripe for them or us to go. And I think that idea that you should learn to live as though every day was your last or every breath was your last, be conscious of your life and don't sort of rush through while you're not paying attention. This is one of the benefits of understanding the idea of mindfulness, is that you're really present to your life. You really become aware and conscious of every moment because you don't really know. And I think this last year, everyone was faced with this reality, right? That we can't take it for granted.
I think that was one of the lessons. The way I see it, one of the lessons of COVID, right? Among many other lessons, right? I think one of the other lessons is that are we learning to share or not, right? Are we learning to understand that humanity is one, right? What happens in one part of the world, again, going back to this tiny molecule, what happens in one part of the world can touch the other part of the world immediately, right? And And this whole concept of everything is relative, the economy is relative, right? The borders are relative. There are no borders, right? Molecules don't care about borders. Molecules don't care about the economy. What matters is this human connection, right? Yeah. While we are in a physical body, one of the main purposes of this physical body is to establish this connection.
Right.
Because once you don't have this physical body, the connection is eternal.
Yep.
Right. But while we have the physical body, there are limitations. And the process, the learning is to slowly get rid of these limitations, right? So that the physical body is again, it's an illusion, right?
Yeah.
The interconnectedness is there. The energy exchange is constant.
Yeah, there's no separation between us.
No separation. So going back to, my mother, there's no separation. Yeah, we're still connected, right? And it's always good to remember that, right? But there's pain in seeing somebody go.
Yeah, of course.
And she was my teacher because she, like I said earlier in my introduction, she was a mystical learner of the mystical part of Christianity, right? And she was better at it than me, right? She was a student of the Bible and could find the mystical aspects in the Bible that it took me a while to realize. Now I do, all right? But yeah, she reminded me, there's a lot of truth in that little book.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing these wonderful stories with us, Adrian.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was wonderful spending time with you.
You've been listening to Mystic Takeaway. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing.